So recently I've been thinking about a little dilemma that's been coming up in my head. And one thing that I've been thinking a lot before is how much I can't stand it when someone who clearly doesn't know very much about a topic or hasn't spent very much time really thinking about it tries to come in and start speaking on it as if they know what they're talking about or um, they have the answer or something like that. Um, but then I also at the same time have this thought of, well, I'm tired of feeling like I have to know everything about a topic or feeling like I have to have every argument and counter argument mapped out before I'm allowed to speak on it. I think people should be allowed to speak and say what they want to say without, you know, feeling like they have to prove something or be perfect or not get anything wrong and so on. So, how do you resolve that? Because it seems at face value that these two things are contradictory because on one hand it seems like it's aggravating when people talk about something when they really don't know what they're talking about, and yet at the same time it also feels shitty when you limit yourself and you are always uncertain and feel like you have to know everything before you can speak, and you don't want to make any mistakes and all that, and you want to be able to just speak without you know knowing everything beforehand. And I think that the real issue here isn't actually that, but it's more so of like the arrogance that people have. It's not so much that people talking about something that they don't really know much about is what bothers me. It's more that when people do it with in a very overconfident, arrogant, egotistical way, and they're not even willing to consider the possibility that they're wrong and so on. And so I think the answer here is actually just, some humility, and you should be able to speak on something that you don't know as much about, but uh you should be at least open to the possibility that you're wrong and be aware of, all of the stuff going on inside your head, all the motives and stuff like that. Because it's like everyone's ego is starving for attention. Everyone wants to seem like they're important. Everyone wants to seem like what they have to say matters more than what somebody else has to say. Everybody wants to seem like they know what they're talking about, that their lives are great or whatever, or that they're smarter than the next person. Everybody is so desperate to prove themselves in some way. And it really gets in the way of being able to grow and learn new things and, consider the possibility that you're wrong. And I say all that willing to admit that it applies to me just as much, if not even more, than other people. I'm someone who's very left brain, and I I always feel like I need certainty before I can act or do something, and I'm always trying to map everything out and remember everything and have everything perfect before I'm willing to act. And it's not very good for, your mental health and your growth and stuff like that. And I just become paralyzed by uncertainty sometimes. It makes me not even want to speak or whatever because I think, oh, I'm going to get something wrong, or I'm going to embarrass myself or whatever, you know. Even that is, you know, the ego trying to protect itself. But the difference is that I'm aware of it. I admit that it's there, and I do actively try to, you know, make it better, try to get out of those, you know, habits. But it's very difficult to do that when you live in a world where you can't even speak your mind and say what you really think without somebody else just taking it as an attack, and then their ego comes in and clashes with you, and then you have to get defensive and it rubs off on you, and so then your ego activates and you feel like you need to defend yourself and your views now, and now it just becomes you know, a pissing contest or whatever. It's so exhausting, and like I just don't even want to do that anymore. Like I don't, which is exactly why, like I said in my other videos, why I don't really debate like I used to. It's just exhausting. Like it's, if you watched my last video, I was talking about how I had basically just burnt out and hit a point where I just basically said whatever the fuck I wanted to people because I don't like I'm tired of this shit. Um, Whenever people ask me how I feel now or what's going on, I just tell them. Well, not every time, but I try to more often to just tell them what I think, that I fucking hate existing in this trash reality. Like this world is fucking trash. It's just nothing but suffering, really. And you know, like I said that last time, you know, I had some pushback, you know, people trying to debate. And again, it happened, well, the next day, I think, or whenever. It was like the next day or a couple of days later, where the same person came back at my work, and I basically said the same thing again, where I just said, you know, I think they asked me how I was doing or something, and I said, not very good, just because, you know, the world, we live in a fucking trash world, terrible world. And I don't, from, if I recall correctly, like I didn't say it with the intention of like provoking or starting an argument or anything. I said it because that's what I really felt at the moment. And again, they kind of, I don't know, they took it as an attack, or maybe they didn't take it as attack, but they just didn't like it so much that they felt a need to, you know, challenge it, of course, as always. Um, they felt like they needed to challenge it and, you know, argue it out or whatever. And who knows, maybe because of how burnt out and exhausted I was, maybe I really did say it in a way that sounded, I don't know, that sounded aggressive to them. I don't know, maybe. But I don't recall having that, you know, intention. But of course, anyway, it winds up leading to me having to defend my views against somebody else who's, you know, you know the drill, right? You've probably had this experience yourself. And I mean, what is there really to say? They were like, "Oh, it's so strange that you have this view of that everything is bad and there's not very much good. That's just strange. You're you're getting into too much internet philosophy or whatever, you know." And then they were like, "Well, where is all this bad stuff that's happening? I don't see it, but where is it?" You know, and it's just like, really, because there's practically an infinite list of things that I could rattle off and it would never end. You know, just even just everything, you know, everything in here. All of the even like with the food we eat, the the factory farming and shit like that. And I'm not, this isn't even a video of me trying to uh make anyone feel bad or convince anyone to eat a certain way or anything like that. That's not even what this is. Like, even though I do it, I'm not trying to make that in this video. My point is, either way, even if you're someone who thinks that we have to eat animals and stuff like that, either way, just look at what happens, and just the mere fact that that has to happen, for all of that suffering and exploitation and rape that has to happen just for somebody to get what they want. The fact that that has to exist to get what you want, that should tell you everything you need to know about this reality. You know, having your throat slit open while you're fully conscious, dropped in boiling water, um, living in a cage in your own excrement. And then you have the wild animals that get eaten by predators and, you know, diseases, bacteria, all that shit. And that's just the animals. That's not even humans. And the statistics, I think, is like over 700,000 people commit suicide every year. Roughly, I think roughly like half of women experience some form of sexual assault in their lifetime. Like 1 out of every 7 people have a diagnosed mental illness or mental disorder. And who knows, the numbers might be even higher than that, because a lot of people who have those kinds of problems, they don't want to tell other people about it because, you know, all of that stuff. And then, I mean, have you ever been inside of a hospital? All of the suffering in there, a nursing home. I mean, it's just, I could go on and on. And even the people that don't have any of those, have to deal with any of those things that I just listed, a huge percentage of those people are still spend a huge chunk of their life just working a job they hate and then having to do chores when they get home, and it's just like a drudgery. Even the quote unquote good lives are like very repetitive and stressful, and just like I wouldn't want to live those either, you know. And then also, everything that's, even some of the stuff that used to be more kind of like, not common knowledge, is becoming common knowledge now, like about Epstein and how the people that run this world are basically pedophiles that traffic children and shit. Like it goes on and on. Like how much do you need? Like what would be, if you're willing to accept all of that, then what, how bad would it have to get? What would be considered an amount that is not acceptable to you? Because it's like, it just seems like there is none, right? It just seems like anything goes. Um, and of course, I didn't even get through all of those. I only mentioned one of those before they had to, you know, start arguing a different point. I'm not going to go all into it because it was all basically the same weak arguments we've already heard 1,000 times. You already know what I'm talking about. It's just the same stuff. And on that day, actually, because like I said before in my last video, my cognitive performance is like very inconsistent. Some days I'm like in the zone. I'm better. I'm thinking more clearly and all that, and I'm feeling a little bit better. And then other days I'm like way off. Like my thinking is not nearly as clear, and it's, you know, and that was a bad day for me too. Like, my cognition on that day was worse than it normally is, and yet I still had no problem, um, coming up with responses. And I guess the good thing is I didn't even feel as bad. Uh, and why I say that, that sounds like the opposite of what I just said, but what I really mean is in terms of like how I felt during the discussion. Normally when that happens, I feel like an insecurity of like, oh, this person's challenging what I'm saying. I don't want to say something that sounds too crazy or too far out, or I don't want to say something that's wrong or false, and then I make myself look like an idiot or something. Like it didn't bother me quite as much that time, that part of it. And I just said what I just responded how I needed to, and I could tell that they were getting irritated by the fact that I had a good response to everything they said. Because again, people who engage in this stuff, they're already invested in a particular viewpoint, and they're just trying to, feed their ego. They're trying to hold on to their worldview. They're trying to, and they want to seem like they know what they're talking about, that they're smart, that they know something that you don't know. And so when you can kind of, when you're able to defend yourself well, they don't like that. And like I said, I get tired of this shit. I don't, I, I'm not, I'm not interested in playing the little game of who has the bigger ego, who has the longer dick, who can piss further than the other person, because like it's just not worth it, man. You feel like shit when you're always in that mindset. It's so aggravating, and it's so hard to not continuously get dragged back down into it, you know. And you ever notice how it's weird? Like, why do people like us always have to be the ones to defend our viewpoint or justify our views? It's like I'm not okay with participating in a world full of rape, torture, child sex trafficking, wage slavery, you name it. Like I'm just like I don't want to support that. I don't want to continue that. I don't want to perpetuate that. I'm I am withdrawing, or whatever you want to say. Why am I the one that needs to justify that or defend that? Like what's wrong with that? It's insane. Um it's just ridiculous, really. Because like I don't do that to them, as long as they are um you know keeping their views in a sense to themselves. It doesn't really bother me. Like I don't if somebody else loves this place and they're having a great time and they have a very good outlook about their own life, that's great. Actually, that's I wish every that could be how it is for everyone. I wish everybody could have a good experience and a good outlook and all of that. Um, but the problem comes when they confuse their own outlook and their own experience with reality, and they use that to um, deny all of the suffering that goes on, and the fact that life is complete misery, and all of the stuff that goes on. You see, they're not willing to reciprocate that. They're not willing to they then they want to you know make you feel bad, or guilt trip you or pressure you into participating in the same things, or saying the same things that they say, having the same beliefs that they have, when that's not the case for you. Like, that it's not a good experience for you. Um you're not going to facilitate it. You refuse to participate in that. um and that's the problem. Why should I be gaslit and guilt tripped and all of that just for being honest about my experience here and what this place actually is? Um, it's like it's like somebody who's kidnaps someone and like tortures them and rapes them, and the person is like, no, this isn't good, I don't like this. And then the rapist is like, no, but you really do like it, you really do want it, you really did ask for it. That's what that shit's like. If you are enjoying this and you are okay with this, i can't I can't I can't force you to think otherwise. I can't really stop you. But don't stick your vile little penis inside of my consciousness and force me to participate in this and tell me that I have to contribute to suffering and torture and rape because I refuse. Oh, but nature is beautiful and it's the cycle of life. Suffering and death is good. It's just because it's the natural cycle of life. It's okay that, a lion eats a gazelle or whatever. It's the cycle of life. People say that, you say that, but yet I don't see you volunteering. If it's so great and it's so good, why don't you go lay down in front of a lion or something? We know why, because you know that it would be a shitty, terrible experience. It's so funny because, you augment yourself any chance you get. You say that, oh, it's nature is beautiful, it's the natural cycle of life, but yet you're wearing clothes that were made in a factory. You drive a car to work, you don't walk to work, you use technology. You live in a building, in a house, or you work in a building that has lights and electricity and computers and screens and mirrors and sinks and showers. You when you get sick and you go to the doctor and you can take a medicine that will cure the bacteria or the virus or whatever to extend your life expectancy, you do it. But that's not the natural cycle of life. The natural cycle of life would just be to let it kill you, let it infect you, and you know give you a horrible, slow, painful death, because that's the natural cycle of life. But you don't do that. You take any opportunity you get to escape that, to modify yourself, to augment your existence, because you know that the natural state of things is also unbearable and stupid. It's just, you don't even believe it yourself. And yeah, nature may look pretty on the outside, but once you look under the hood and you see all that suffering, the predation, the diseases, the starvation, you realize what's going on really is as ugly as it gets. It's kind of like a pretty girl who dresses up all nice, but she's really like a thief, or like a fraud, or somebody who like robs people. You're at the club and then this pretty girl who's all dressed up calls you over and seduces you, and you think that, oh, she likes you or whatever, but really then you get poisoned and you get duped and you get robbed and all your stuff is gone. Yeah, that's basically what this reality is like, what nature is like. That's the analogy that it reminds me of.